So here we go. Welcome, y'all. I'm really happy you're here. It's hard to do these things on a beautiful, almost summer Sunday, but here we are. I wanted to get something done close to the beginning of the Postcard Fest and to kind of set the table for you to do a day song at the end of the Postcard Fest. I think September 1st falls on a Tuesday, so I'm planning mine for a couple of days before that. And I've already alerted my spouse to say I'm doing a day song. I don't know if you have that same kind of thing or if you're not in a relationship or if you're already alone or whatever, but being alone on that day is going to provide the best results, I think. Of course, I wouldn't know because my wife has been good enough to leave each time I've attempted to do this day song, and so I'm very grateful for that. I'm grateful you registered for this workshop. Your contributions allow the continued operation of the Cascadia Poetics Lab, which is undergoing a restructuring of operations this year in order to better operate in the future and to be sustainable in the future. So every dollar helps more than you can imagine. You should have a book of poems by a poet you admire. Have it handy. And I have mine pretty handy, but it's in the back. So if everybody wants to kind of hold up what they have. There we go. There we go. I will explain as we get into what's Ziggy? Oh, that's Ziggy's place. Far out. You're getting a book and your computer with its own mind decided it was going to display your artwork, which I thought was
Oh,
great. I didn't mean to scare you. It was just your artwork. Nothing. Oh, people are putting it in the chat. Jane Hirschfield, The Lives of Hearts. Feel free to put it in the chat. You know, the other thing you should put in the chat is who you are, where you're from, and what you're hoping to get out of this class here today, this workshop. And there will be opportunities for questions. And in fact, if you have questions, just fire away. But let me get these last couple of paragraphs. If you get something out of today's workshop, I'll be offering 3 5-week workshops starting in fall called Poetry as Neuro Resilience. The first 5 will be October and November, then another 5 in January and February, and another 5 in April and May. The Poetry Postcard Fest begins its 20th season on the 4th of July, 2026, the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. For many of us who've been participating in this self-guided poetry workshop, summer means postcard poems, and we prepare all year by buying postcards and collage materials, clearing the social calendar enough for us to fulfill our promise to send out at least 31 original poems written on postcards before August 31st. Postcard season is a time of year akin to the holiday season or spring. If you're not talking, it would be great if you could mute so we didn't have any background noise or spouses coming in saying dinner's ready or any of that. In 2022, inspired by Pierre Joris and Bernadette Mayer, I created an exercise for our online workshop participants called the Day Song. So in our workshop, I'll go over some methods one can use for postcards and for day songs. The daily writing or almost daily writing of postcards is essential for the best day song results. Daily journal writing is also very helpful. It's a good way to get the sludge of your daily thoughts out of your work. Um, if you haven't done Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, I highly recommend it. You can get a PDF online, but even a used copy would be amazing, and it's life-changing. So, going to go right into it now and talk about some of the fest basics. The lists will go out on the 4th of July. We have done address validation. It's being done by Megan Durham, who is our keeper of the postcard lists this year. Veronica Martinez is no longer with us. It's part of the changes I was talking about at the beginning of our meeting today. So Megan will have the lists. Those are going to go out at the 4th of July on the latest. And we're nearing up, I think, 500 people registered so far. Our record is 608 people in 9 countries. That was a couple of years ago. The second thing about the postcards is spontaneous composition. We urge people to just let it fly. Trust that you can come up with something good by writing directly on the postcard. Now, I know some people have really shitty handwriting. So if you can type up your poem and maybe glue it to the postcard, I think that's okay. But the idea is that we're learning how to compose spontaneously. And I think that once you get the knack of that, it's hard to make that transition. There's a great essay by David Sherwin on how writing spontaneous poetry postcards made him a better designer. You can find that somewhere on the Poetry Postcard Fest website. And if I need to, I can dig it up and put it in the chat. The other thing about the Postcard Fest is that it's about epistolary poetry. So the epistle, the letter poem. And I'm going to share screen for a second to give you a sense of what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to go to share, go here, and on my website, they're linked from here, Poetics, and linked from Workshop, Poetics. There's a page with many essays about poetics. Some of them are more about consciousness, which I think is related to poetics, but I'm adding to this all the time. I find things in my journal, which I think I've got to remember this, and I'm like, all right, I'll put it on the poetics page. And so if we go down, and these are basically alphabetical by author's last name. And here's Sam Hamill, Epistolary Poetry, and such a great essay. And he's talking about Richard Hugo didn't invent letter poems, and Sam does talk about who invents them. Quintus Horatius Flaccus, a Latin poet who preceded Hugo by roughly 2,000 years. Sam's wise guy nature comes out in that. But the paragraph I want to say is this here. Much of the charm of the letter poem lies in its inside information. Without Obata's footnote, which was referenced earlier, we could not possibly gain the insight into the difference between these two poets and their respective approach to craft. And yet, even without the footnote, there's a certain appeal, even at a single reading. The poem as letter allows a privacy of speech and a certain confidentiality of tone that other genres tend to repel. Epistolary poetry may be said to be the first expression of the confessional school, since its tendency is to include and or refer to autobiographical and biographical detail not generally known to the public. However, in order to establish a certain degree of accessibility in the poem, these details must reveal their own significance somehow without the context of the poem. And he's got a Du Fu example of the letter poem. So I'm going to make a quick copy of that URL and stick it in the chat where there are already 22 messages. And there we go. So you can read that at your own convenience if that interests you. There's a notion of first thought, best thought in open form in North American poetry. Allen Ginsberg talked to this subject when I interviewed him in June of, God, it's almost June of 1994. 32 years? Is that how long ago it was? Anyway, he talked about writing a poem with Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and they were taking turns. You write a line, I write a line, going on. And he wrote, Ginsberg was about to write, the monk bent down to lace his animal shoes. And then he realized what I meant was leather shoes. And Trungpa is like, no, animal shoes, stick with that. That's where the potency is, that first thought before you try and edit it or editorialize on it, to go with that first thought. And Ginsberg's also very clear to note that, finding that genuine first thought, it is like stirring up the water at the edge of the river. It might be a little muddy, and then you see some clarity come in. So your first thought is not necessarily I'm having a thought, but first image or first bit of charged, a verse that's charged with a melody or something like that. So the first thought, best thought method is recommended. And if I go back to the share screen again, and I'm doing the share screen so you can kind of get a sense of how to get around these websites with so much information, just so much. So I go to interviews here and then listen to the interviews from the archives. And then I type in Allen Ginsberg, and there he is. You can do 100 entries on a page. So first thought, best thought, that's the cut right there. And there's the most beautiful autograph I ever got from Allen, June 12th, 1994. Love how people put dates on it. That really grounds it. And you really have a sense. I can see very clearly how that was happening. So if you like, you can go to this cut. And well, we have the transcription of it. First Thought, Best Thought is the title of a book by Chogyam Trungpa, my Tibetan Lama guru, and it came up in the course of a conversation which we were composing a chain poem together, each of us contributing one line apiece. And at some point I said, the monk bent down to lace his animal shoes. And I didn't know what I meant by animal shoes. It was just came out of my head. And he said, animal shoes? I said, yes. Oh, yes, the shoes are made of leather, animal shoes. And he said, first thought, best thought. And the first thought is the best thought. And I said, first thought, best thought, condensing it down, meaning the first raw flash on your mind that's usually visual before you mediate it and edit it and editorialize on it and generalize on it, make it okay for other people to censor before you filter it. It usually comes intact as a kind of raw, emotionally interesting gleam, usually visual. So Jack Kerouac has the idea in his instructions for writing, don't stop to think of words, but to see picture better. For example, the first primordial picture that you see, because what people tend to do is be a little ashamed of their minds or ashamed of their raw thoughts or theme. Well, that's too personal, or that's just me, or maybe I should generalize on it. Say I'm having a dream in which I'm sleeping with my mother. No, I don't want to write about that. People would they have something to say about it. So I think I'll say, I had a dream in which I did something bad, or I had a dream in which I outraged society, or I had a dream in which whatever, I don't know. And so finally you lose the humor, the contradictoriness, and the quiddity and humanity in that first glimpse that goes back to Oedipus, goes back to Freud, or goes back before the Bible. And you lose the detail, the believability, and instead you get some generalization or abstraction. And William Blake says, and he's paraphrasing Blake here, and the paraphrase is better, I think, than Blake. At least it's in American English. Generalization and abstraction are the plea of the hypocrite, knave, and scoundrel. Labor well the minute particulars. Take care of the little ones, the minute particular details, and they will take care of you. Details are the life of prose or poetry. Or as Pound said, direct treatment of the thing or object. And William Carlos Williams said, no ideas, but in things, or in the American vernacular, give me a for instance. So I'm going to stop the share, put that in the chat. It was a life-changing thing to interview Allen Ginsberg, and then interview Michael McClure the next year, which was even more mind-blowing. But I think I needed to interview Ginsberg first to sort of set that foundation. So those are some of the thoughts. There's one other thing here, and there is this notion of the serial poem, and seriality comes to mind when doing the Postcard Fest. And I'll give you a couple of examples. And I think you have time between now and 4th of July to come up with some idea. And, it might hit you, or you might have to give it some psychic bandwidth for a few days. But when you do that, I think it usually lands in your lap. T. Clear is a Seattle poet living not too far from here to the north, and she included the particular phase of the moon in every card that she wrote. Talk about marking the Dharma position. What degree, waning moon, full moon, whatever. The percentage. You can see it on your weather app. I'm pretty sure, on the weather app that you check, it has the the moon on there, but there's a great moon app, and I think it's important to know. See what it says here on mine. Here it is. New moon, illumination 0%. Moon set 9:32. Next full moon 15 days. But she had the degrees in it, so she was going a little further down the scientific specificity. And then there's a young postcard poet. He's on our board of directors now, Zach Charles. And he leads the Cascadia 2050 Committee, which is a youth initiative, 20 to 40-year-old poets. And he was living very close to Alki Beach, beautiful part of Seattle, in the West Seattle neighborhood. And he was marking the tide level on each day. And he made a series of poems where the image had the tide. It was higher as the tide got higher and lower as it went down. And so he included that and references to that in his poems for that month of August. I think that's going back now 4 years. So to get some sense of how to capture the daily luminous details, as Allen Ginsberg or William, actually, I think that's a Pound line, the luminous details, those are great examples. Earth and Sky publishes a moon phase calendar each year to have on your wall. There you go. Far out. Thanks, Jerry. So those are just some of the things that I wanted to kind of use to kind of get your mind going as to what you can do. I've never been that that good about setting up an intention. What I will do though is get some poets who I want to learn more about. I remember one year Denise Levertov. I remember another year a Korean poet in translation, Lee Seong-bok. And when you're investing in time, looking for the right quote to begin a poem, I used epigraphs from these poets. You're learning more about that poet and you're getting to know them better and you're digging in. So someone maybe you hadn't spent enough time with or would like to spend more time with in terms of reading their poetry, that's a great thing. And see how you graft off of that particular statement. And when I say graft, I'm sure that not everybody knows what I mean. So I'm going to go back to the website and give you a sense of what I'm talking about. I wonder if it's shows up under workshops. I have an essay called Mammal Grafting. Those who've taken my workshops may have seen it before. I don't have it linked there, so I'm just going to do a quick search. Mammal grafting, here it is. And I'll put this link in the chat. I am a mammal patriot, Michael McClure said. Early 60s too. A bit ahead of the curve there. So he's taking this poem, Dolphin Skull. Now I smell, and the line from it. Now I smell my grandma. She looks at me through her thick glasses. Now I understand the sexual addiction of my young manhood was a crucifixion, glittering and lovely as an ostrich boa and smashed mirrors seen on acid. And then he does that same few lines and then goes a different way. Now I see that perception is a shape of the darkness seeing itself. Naked bodies and layers on shelves in space and behind stalactites alight with themselves, seduce me with fleshy softness of their meat, calves, forearms, and the perfumes. The perfumes are lost as moths in our hormonal storms, but they direct us. They guided me. But he was not finished with that line, felt that there was more that he could wring out of it. The same lines that we had at the beginning. Now I understand the sexual addiction of my young manhood was a crucifixion, glittering and lovely as an ostrich boa and smashed mirrors seen on acid. Now I'm an old man with a handsome face, and after the bloody movie full of guns and stabbings and helicopters, I stop at the photo booth, and in the mirror is a dog with jowls, a silver fox, an eagle in the whirlpool. Here's the strip of 4 photos. A sincere man with white hair and eyebrows, eyes almost inside out, staring from a black Armani collar. Then the same man, still in front of scarlet drapes, with his eyes looking up into science fiction in his forehead. Now his head rests dazed against the side of the booth. In the last photo, I am fully alert, just as I always am, a suicidal child in love with experience, risking all to be only with you, as the dragon world with its 100 eyes passes, and I still long to be Shelley. Well, he's grafting his own work in there, but you don't have to do that. You can graft somebody else's and steal a bit of their fire. So that's just one suggestion, the grafting. So, first of all, before I forge ahead with this, are there any questions? Anyone you want to raise your cyber hand and go forward? I'm getting the feeling 23, doing pretty good on time, 23 minutes in. So go ahead. We've got Karen and then Mateo. Karen, go ahead.
Yes, when you're grafting, do you give pay tribute to the person from whom you're grafting?
Yes, I think putting it in italics, or if you're writing, you can't use italics, so use quotation marks. But I think it's essential to give credit where you're getting it from. Also, what it says to the reader is, hey, they're reading so and so. I like that. I like that person. So getting creative with the kind of quotes that you put in, it really says something about you, and it tells the reader, if they know that writer. I mean, I was using Lee Seong-bok, and I'm sure that there are very few people who've heard of this obscure Korean poet who doesn't write in English but has to be translated into English. But the quotes were amazing, and I found them very generative.
And would it be appropriate or good enough to say after Paul Nelson, for instance, after Paul Nelson?
Yeah, I think that's for sure. That's one way of doing it, especially, if there's an affinity with the subject that the first poet that you're grafting from, if there's some kind of an affinity, like, I've got Sam Hamill's Habitation picked out, this doorstop of a book. So I have really good feelings for Sam and miss him every day. What is it? He died in 2018, so 8 years. It's already 8 years. So yeah, I was, and of course, if I was doing a take on a theme that he was doing a take on, then yes, you're writing after that person. It doesn't always have to be after, but I think it's really essential to give credit. You're giving me the floating thumbs up, far out. Does that it makes sense? Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, we got Mateo, then Richard. So
Oh,
Mateo, yeah.
my question is very basic. I haven't been collecting postcards all year, so I have zero postcards. So any suggestions on how we deal with that? What's the best way? What's a,
Oh my God, where are we at? 326. Okay. Well, the first thing is you start, you can go to antique shops. You can go to, like, in the Pike Place Market, which I know you know because you used to live out here, or similar tourist things. You can get those touristy things. At
oh,
museums, oh my God, exit through the gift shop and
hmm
a deck of postcards by Clifford Still or whomever.
hmm
Saga says everything is a postcard. Um, I think that's very true. I collect cereal boxes, and right now, next to me, I could just pick out this stuff, like um, organic chia seeds. I might cut out the words organic, non-GMO, kosher, gluten-free, vegan, for instance, from the back. And one thing I've learned about these, how these aren't really bags anymore, these resealable things, they're just kind of plastic. I guess technically they are bags, but they glue really nicely with some of that little stick of glue, with the orange cap. They glue on. I try and put it on at an angle. Or, for example, plant-based superfood. People might think I'm talking about the poem, which is okay. And then this stuff. Have you had this Dubai chocolate? This is Dubai style chocolate. I mean, that shit is crack. It's nuts. I gave some to a homeless person who hangs out at the co-op. I said, I want to know what you think of these. And she's like, I ate the whole bag in one sitting, which I don't recommend. What else? Um, Here's from a deck of gum, or a pack of gum that my daughter gave me, and it's the Buddha. And it's only a little thing like this, but that's already found its way in one postcard, the other side. And then I don't know, maybe even this anti-itch cream. Actually, if I cut this out, except that it's folded, so it's kind of small. So itself wouldn't make a great postcard because it's already folded. But cereal box, um, you know, I I have problems now throwing things away because I want to give them more life in a poem, and I like the weirdness that it puts in. I could give you some examples if you like. Does that make sense?
Yes, that totally makes sense. So, one question. So, you're literally cutting out sometimes a postcard size uh, piece of the cardboard box, of the
Yeah,
cereal box. Okay.
yeah, and writing on the back of it. If you go bigger than standard postcard size, you have to use a letter stamp for
Right,
that,
right.
right?
How
And
much is
if
a postcard stamp now? What's the...
I don't know, it's like 60, it's up there. Um,
Okay.
I forget what it is. By the way, the whole
Buy
stamp,
forever
how
stamps.
much is it?
Buy forever stamps.
Yeah, forever stamps, exactly. Yeah, you buy forever stamps and you can use them in 10 years and they still have the same kind of potency. Um, by the way, the stamps, if you get, and we could do a whole workshop on stamps, because two of the current stamps that are out, who can say who are two of the coolest stamps ever just came out? Does anyone know? Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee. Holy shit. Why did they wait so long to get stamps for these guys? I don't know. But I recommend getting a couple of sheets of those and having them. And you know what? I'm not afraid. 61 cents. Thanks, Sally. I'm not afraid to give the USPS a little more dough than just what they would get from the postcard stamp. So I've got a I've got a whole folder with stamps, and I got some of those Haida, uh, was it Haida Raven stamps from a few years ago? You know, those go to special people. It's like a certain person comes up on your list and they're your friend. And it's like, oh, I've got to give them a good poem and a cool stamp. So having lots of stamps on hand is recommended. All right, Richard, you have your hand up and you've been patient.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I've not done your poetry postcard before, so I really need some basics. We write a poem that fits on a postcard. We mail it every day to somebody on the list.
Yeah,
Do we put in our return address?
you don't
And
have you don't have to. Now, if you write legibly and if you sign your name,
yeah,
it's,
okay.
it's a lot of people who don't sign their names. They're going to know it came from you because they're going to say, Where do you live, Richard?"
Tacoma.
Yeah. So they're going to say, Richard Tacoma. Oh, it's got to be this. Or even you put your initials,
Mhm.
RW Tacoma. They're going to go, oh, that must be Richard. Okay. And then some people are like, they get their list out, they print it out, and they
Mhm.
put, did I get a card from them? And a little check mark.
Ah,
So,
okay.
in fact, I have my postcards from 2025. I think this is 2020. Oh, that's 2024. 2024. Here's my list
Oh, okay.
from that year. And then I'm writing at the end, what date did I send it to him? What number stamp was it? Or what number postcard? Because I number my postcards and I
Ah,
have that handy. But let me just direct you to the website. This is great. And I want to answer all of your questions because I suspect,
mhm.
Richard, that other people have the questions that you have. So
Okay,
I'm going to go back to Cascadia Poetics Lab.
okay,
By the way, there's Zach's workshop coming up in 13 days. I want to write a poem, but don't know how.
okay.
I think he's going to do a great job. So if I go to the Poetry Postcard Fest section
Hmm.
and then I go to resources, how it works.
Ah, okay.
You go to how it works. This is the official page.
All right.
Look at that postcard by Abaya Thomas. Although now we wouldn't we have a different feeling for that guy that you put on the stamp than we did when this was created. So number one, can't remember if you registered, contact us. We'll let you know. I'm getting a lot of those, not a lot of those, but
Okay.
a good amount of those emails for people who don't remember if I registered or not. We're trying to create a dashboard so people can update their information, but it's becoming very difficult. Purchase or create 31 postcards for writing and sending poems to other participants. We offer workshops and group writes for practice. Want to make customized postcards? Watch for announcements. We did 3 poetry postcard activations this year in local parks, and on August 8th we'll be at the Hillman City Block Party in Seattle. So if you want to come by, if you don't have all your cards and want to come by and make some postcards, you're welcome to. Complete the name and address form. Yeah, that's about validation. I think we got that under control. I don't think we're using team captains this year. Find the name directly below yours on the list. You'll send your first postcard poem to that person.
Okay.
If you're number 8, you send to number 9, go to number 32, and then go to the top. Send your first poem between the day you receive the list and August 31st, but no later than that. People break this every now and then. They break an arm and can't write, or something happens. There's a tornado in their house.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people who will send it a year later saying, I'm going to get through my 31. And we admire that. Write a new poem each day, or write 3 poems every 3rd day, and move down the list for each recipient, then move back to the beginning till you reach your name. Keep photos or copies of your poems and postcards. You can scan them, or you can just take a picture so that you have a record of it. I was transcribing all my poems for the longest time, and I just don't do it anymore. I take a photograph or I scan. The scan is best for me.
Mm-hmm.
Mail all 31 postcards by August 31st. Avoid posting your poems online till at least August 31st. It would be shitty if someone saw their poem online before it came to them in the mailbox. So, don't blab about it on Facebook. I mean, wait on the Facebook Poetry Postcard Fest page. Wait. Do not post or distribute anyone else's poems without their permission. I think that the image is fair game, especially if it's a store-bought image. But don't be posting people's poems online. Ask them. If you need to get their email address, we can get that to you. And then that's the deal.
And I have one other question for you, again, as a beginner. What is a day song?
Yeah, we're going to get into that.
Okay.
We're going to get into that in a big way. So I will do that, but I want to do a writing exercise first. So are there any other questions about the Postcard Fest? And the poetry, the Facebook page. Are you familiar with the Poetry Postcard Fest Facebook page? Richard, have you seen that?
No, I'm not. I'm not on Facebook.
Good for you. That's the right answer.
Okay. Well, it's
Well,
age related, I think.
You're too young for Facebook. Is that what you're doing?
Okay.
One time I made a typo while I was attempting to write social media, and it came out social mierda. And I thought, I'm keeping that. I'm keeping that.
How perfect.
A Freudian typo.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's that. All right, I'm going to go back to the thing. I went back to my blog post, Notes on Gone South, which is written by the late Canadian poet Barry McKinnon. God, I love Barry. He was a great poet. And it really made clear to me this poetry game that in a way we all play, almost everyone plays it. Such a waste of time, because he was such a brilliant poet, and we don't know who he is. I mentioned Barry McKinnon. Very few people know who he is. He has some awareness in this bioregion, and certainly more awareness in British Columbia. But Americans are quick to run down Canada, and I don't mean in the way that Trump did, which is like 4,000 times worse. But Barry wrote about his writing this poem called Arrhythmia. And the composing principle, he felt, he hoped was in line with William Carlos Williams' dictum that each poem must sum up the poet's life to that point. And he said, I wrote Arrhythmia daily with a sense that if I had anything more to say, I'd better get at it. If the word subject is still in the postmodern lexicon, I believe the poet's subject is time, and that language discloses the actualities therein. Emotion is the poem's fact. So what does that mean, summing up your life up until that point? It means including your own personal mythology, something about you that's happening. Now, you are writing to a stranger. That's the good or bad of it. And you're also writing to one person. So you can kind of let it rip because, they're not supposed to post your poems online. So you can be pretty sure that maybe them and their spouse is going to see it. One time I heard a story about a letter carrier who was delivering the mail to a postcard fest person and said, hey, this one's pretty good. So occasionally a letter carrier will see it. And I think it's such a great story. Another thing that is central to Buddhism and Soto Zen Buddhism is something called the Dharma position. And I think I mentioned that earlier in the context of T. Clear and her noting the phases of the moon and the particular degrees of waning or waxing during each poem that she wrote during the Poetry Postcard Fest. I think it was about 10 or 15 years ago, right? So what is it about this particular moment in time that's never going to be repeated? You can't step in the same river twice. Isn't that how it was said? So what are the specifics of this moment in time? What is the particular Dharma position? Because it's never going to be repeated quite like this. And for those of us who've gone through pandemics and recessions and MAGA, we don't want it repeated. It's hard enough the first time. So I think two things, one thing about including these two concepts, the Dharma position, the personal mythology, is that AI can't write that poem. You don't need to get into too much specifics. I don't think people want to hear about your hemorrhoids, for instance. Or as my sister said, I don't think people are interested in your prostate cancer treatments, which, maybe that's true, but it was so real to me at the time, and so many synchronicity type things were happening to me, that I ended up talking about that and then showing my poems to my doctor, who I think got a kick out of them. And the results were successful. I was able to stay alive. And Frank Zappa died at 53 from prostate cancer. Things that can be checked, So I'm really grateful to be here and grateful I went through that. But, my sister had a point. Do people want to hear about my prostate cancer treatment? Who knows? I have heard of people throwing away poems. I could show you poems going back, I believe, to every year of the festival. So I've collected the poems I've received for 19 years. I used to do pictures of, put all the poems I received on my, Persian rug, and then take a picture, stand on a chair and take a picture from above, or do a video or other such ways. But I think it's a beautiful thing if someone sends you a card, and I would never throw one out. So we're going to do a little exercise now, and here's where the book that you got is going to come in handy. The work of the late poet, translator, and anthologist Jerome Rothenberg is poised to last many decades, perhaps centuries. He died April 21, 2024 in California, originally from New York. Some of the anthologies that he created: Poems for the Millennium, volumes 1 and 2. Wow. If that's the only thing he did in his whole career, he'd be in the Poetry Hall of Fame for those two things, because they're amazing anthologies of 20th century avant-garde literature, and it's just stunning. When he traveled to Auburn, Washington to read and give a workshop at the original SPLAB, the Northwest Spoken Word Lab, 14 South Division, Richard, not too far from Tacoma. His latest book was The Lorca Variations. And we recorded an interview in November 2001 while he was in Auburn about the process which led to the Lorca Variations. And I believe I have it up here. So if I do Zoom, if I do share sound, optimize for video sharing, and click on that, then you'll be able to hear, I hope. So I'm cueing it in a little bit, and just give me a thumbs up if you hear it after I hit the triangle.
For carrying through on paying my respects to Federico, so I entered into a process of writing, in which I went back to a number of the poems in suites, and with each poem I extracted all of the English nouns. I mean, in other words, this is my translations, and although it's Lorca's poems to start with, the words are words of our language, or words that I've selected as the poet translator, and I set the words up in columns and moved among the columns, picking out the words, all of the nouns in the Lorca poems, sometimes in a very systematic way, sometimes in a very free way, but so as to, in each poem, have all of Lorca's nouns attended to, and poems emerged that, on the one hand, were very different, and on the other hand, were clearly Lorca. It was a step for me beyond translation. It's not paraphrase. It's really a way of creating new poems based on the gathering of words from the other poet, and the result was a book of 33 poems plus one, 33, 34 poems called I called the Lorca Variations.
Yeah, the key word, I guess, is other. And when we look at the stance toward poetry that many in the avant-garde of the 20th century take, as opposed to the mainstream, there's less of an ego involved and more of a poet as medium, or at least as person who allows other voices into the poem, chance operations. And you use the word othering during your workshop. Of course, you put that on a word processor, and it's going to redline it as not being a word. But
it does it all the time. That's why we cut out that function from our computers.
It's tough for poets, isn't it? It just doesn't get poetry. But why don't you tell us about this notion of othering, and the notion of trying to, as Olson said, rid yourself of the lyrical interference of the ego.
Well, because we all carry our egos with us, so it is perhaps a vain ambition to think that you're going to rid yourself of ego, but lyrical interference. I mean, the lyric is taken, if we take it in not in the sense of song, but in the sense of a first person poetry, the most subjective form of poetry. Ultimately, this has its limitations. It throws the poet back on himself, herself, and that's okay, but it also narrows down the field of poetry. And when we imagine ourselves to be part of a lineage going back to a Homer or a Dante or a Shakespeare, poetry is a big proposition there. Partly it's big because Dante, Shakespeare, Homer, worked extensively, and these were large works. But even the possibility that in the shorter work, the short poem, the medium-sized poem, that there would be room for more than that kind of vaunted self-expression. The possibility of being able to express other selves, selves other than me. That the poet can be a spokesman for others and bear witness in the name of others. And this is, I think, has been an ambition of poetry, let's say of poets in America, going back to the time of the great founding poet Walt Whitman, who in the great poem cryptically called "Song of Myself" attempted to bring all possible selves into the poem, for everything belonging to me as well belongs to you, he said.
Voices of the diseased, and so on and so forth.
Also the long suppressed, through me many long suppressed voices, Whitman says, and that has for years been uppermost in my mind, and so. Techniques of poetry, collage appropriation, chance operations, the kind of variations that I'm speaking about, have seemed to me to be, not just ways of playing around with language, but ways of othering, of bringing the voices of others into the poem. And in that sense also, not just to establish identity, but in a way to put identity into question.
That's a great thing, to put identity into question. I mean, you start getting into metaphysics when you talk about that. Now, that may not be safe for everybody. There may be people who are having, issues with being here, that would be a difficult thing. But for poets, a lot of poets went nuts too. For poets to detach from identity or obscure that might be some interesting subject material to go for. This is, can you still see the Rothenberg page? Is that still being shared? Yeah, 2001 interview. And he reads from this. Would you be interested in hearing? Should I play a little bit of his poem, or are you chomping at the bit to write? I see one thumb up. Anyone else? Well,
yes, please.
Yes, please. Okay. So let's
othering and some of those other processes.
See if I can go into here.
And was Mercury and made him.
Okay, here we go. So he's taking Lorca's nouns and writing his own poem. Now, remember, this is not too long. I'm talking to him not too long after September 11th. This is the book, the Lorca Variations. You can see it's got some sun damage from being in the sun. I know I'm not the greatest caretaker of books. So the specter of 9/11, especially for a New Yorker, is very heavy at this time. And here it goes.
How it comes from Africa to New York.
Let me just get that epigraph in here.
Bookmark there.
Yeah. It begins with a quote from Lorca saying, the mask, look at the mask, how it comes from Africa to New York. And the first section, the first section is titled, They Are Gone, the Pepper Trees. Half of it was sand, and what remained was mercury and made him tremble, too afraid to rub it in while visioning a hippopotamus who stalked through everlastings, and other animals who crossed those endless bridges whom he could bring down with a spear, their beaks grown dormant, their flesh nailed onto trees, from which he used to cut his masks, would wear his masks around New York, half crazy. Wasn't he the bright gazelle mask flashing where he walked? What joy to be among you at this gathering, he thought, to spend this time with you, here where the wheat rots, swans rut, camels plod among the peppers, in the mask that shows you fear, the mask dissolving into sand like solitude and ashes, where the light has died away so recently, the cat is playing with a cork, and all things come into this other light. The phosphorus ignites over New York, where death's a crocodile and sunlight makes the world grow darker, where a sword cuts through my throat, my feet, where silence covers everything, where eyes turn white, where time turns inside out like valleys rife with mutilated buds in Africa, inviting us to join their dance of death. The second section is called canyons of lime imprisoned. A fond farewell at the borders, see the dead and how they hunker down, who bring us hurricanes, those naked masks, those shameless tumulters, who tempt us with strange lights. Horses will ride past, slender mounts for children, edging their way through niches, squeezing into bank vaults. Wall Street poor and empty, roofs on which manometers break into pieces, and the channels they leave behind excite the iris, yes, and voices cut across New York, and someone wears a mask that looks like North America, and someone else counts up the unemployed whose numbers brought together in a frozen dance. Oh, Lorca, darken the sky. These herds are what we all will become. Their frenzy will be ours tomorrow. Oh, my naked heart. We watch the Sphinx together, squatting inside this cemetery, she with a bank director's mask and you a Chinaman's, your profile soon identical except that you still sing your deep song while the sky fills up with down and fireflies grow faint and then invisible. Time hides inside you. Can you feel it? Does it press against your mask? Whose groans are rising in this place? Whose blood is on our blueprints even now? Is there a formula to chart the impetus we feel, a yellow thread to recollect it? When I dance, the naked wife says it is no less for money. When I give you tail, you fade in me and die. The stillness overtakes you. Sky is split asunder. Lime and mire splatter on the snow. The night makes even gold turn black for us who wait here at our windows, watch old columns lit by flames, the impetus returning like a wheel that spins forever in an empty bank vault. See it with your own eyes. Hear it cross this space in silence. Watch her naked body in your mirrors. Feel the sap press upward as if moving among mountains. Guano everywhere to drown in guano. Living buried in its canyons.
You imagine being in a studio in Auburn, Washington, and he reads something like that to me, one person? Holy shit, what an experience. Any thoughts about Jerome Rothenberg? Any thoughts about othering? Mary Beth, I asked you if you wanted to talk about any kind of serial work you've done on poetry. Does something come to mind for you?
Well, in the past, as you know, I've sometimes chosen a form to use to tie the month together. But I also find it helpful to have kind of either chosen a topic, something to look at over the course of the month, with some backup plans for the days when it doesn't work out. So
Having a plan B.
having a plan B, because sometimes you need kind of a kick to get something started every day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. You know, when we begin to, one of the things that August does is that it puts poetry higher on the top of priorities. You're getting poems in the mail. You're thinking about ideas. And usually we get these ideas all the time, but it's like, no, I'm going to the dentist. I don't have time for that. But, you know, stealing a bit of Jerome Rothenberg's fire, for instance, which we're going to do in this exercise that we're going to try. The cat plays with the cork. I bet that was really happening in his house at the time. And his cat is forever memorialized in this poem, which I think is so cool. Our rabbits, our current rabbit, our past rabbit, but our current rabbit gets into the poems quite often. And then there's the notion of that line, whose blood is on our blueprints now? Holy cow. Or when are we going to be able to see the Kennedy Center without the tarp in front of it, for instance, right? If we mark these things, these luminous details, we're going to forget about this until somebody brings it up. 10 years from now, we're going to go, that tarp thing, that was the least of it. But it was interesting showing the person's pettiness that he had to follow the law and wouldn't let people see it, wouldn't let people have the satisfaction of watching those letters go down, which says so much. The image of it says so much about the pettiness. Fantastic. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a break, and then we're going to go away for 4 minutes. It's 3:58. Maybe come back at 4:03 Pacific, and at which time we're going to be harvesting nouns, and I'll start that. I'll let you know when you can do that. If you want to start doing that now, that's fine. But it's time to have a bio break if you need it, and I do. And we'll come back, and I'll give you the instructions, and we'll get rocking on that. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
See you in a few.
Yeah. Just curious, how long is the workshop supposed to be?
Supposed to go till 1 more hour.
Okay.
We're recording it.
Okay, great. Thanks.
You bet. Thanks for being here. We're in Japan in February, and something said to me, take that newspaper and just grab it. It was this, it's just a sales thing. I don't know what the hell they're selling. Maybe it's tourism or whatever. But this is great collage material, and I was smart enough to get it. In fact, we've already used some of this when we were in Spokane. A friend was having a birthday party, and my wife said, I don't have any wrapping paper. And I said, I got an idea. So we used some of the Japanese text. It was fantastic. Always thinking about postcards and materials one can use. Okay. 2 more people coming in. Here we go. And they're all Eva. Eva, you're trying to get different camera angles? Is everyone back? Okay, so you don't have to take the nouns just from one poem. This is just an exercise, but I've got this book here, Habitation by Sam Hamill. Sam Hamill founded Copper Canyon Press. He translated Basho. This is much of his collected poetry in this book, Habitation. Came out on Lost Horse Press a few years ago. So I'm just going to thumb through this, and I'm going to pick out nouns, and I'm going to write them down in my pocket journal. Now, I always carry one of these. I write a 17-syllable poem in it every day. I mark with a sticker. I love stickers. Stickers, by the way, on postcards. Stickers and ink stamps. Mary Beth, you're nodding like I've seen Paul's stickers before, or you have your own stickers probably. But anyway, and I also put stickers inside. And quite often I'll do a little collage inside here with some cool stickers. I haven't done that so far in this pocket notebook. So we're going to take 5 minutes to write down nouns that we can use in a poem. Starting now, 4:04, going till 4:09. I'm going to mute myself. Hey, it's 4:09. Everybody get their nouns? Anybody need more time? If you need more time, raise your hand. Your cyber hand, if you like. Maybe while you were getting nouns, you saw a great line of poetry there that has some charge for you. Maybe you want to start your poem on a postcard with that epigraph, of course, giving the person credit. I got this line from Sam Hamill. I began this poem a month ago. I think it's a great line. And, in some ways you do, because there's probably something that's been, I don't want to say under your skin, but something that you've been thinking about, something that you've been putting psychic energy into. And God is the postcard poem, a beautiful place to put that, which of course reveals some of your personal mythology. Do you know that Charles Olson line from the Maximus poems? Tell you, who can tell another how to manage this swimming? He was right. People don't change. They only stand more revealed. I likewise. Like Trump standing more revealed. Shitting his pants, falling asleep at the Knicks game? At the Knicks game, for crying out loud. What could be more loud and exciting than an NBA Finals game? And that's the one they lost. I mean, this kind of stuff, if we don't write it now, we forget about it. But if we think about it now, how potent it is, and how potent it will be to remember it in 25, 50, 100 years, when every age will have to fight their own version of fascism. Who was it? Primo Levi? Every age has its own fascism. Well, we thought we were going to escape that. We didn't, but here we are. and I'm optimistic we're going to get through. Another thing, the whole reflecting pool. He paints it blue, and now it's filled with algae. Did people see this? Oh my God! This guy thinks he knows everything, and it's like what somebody said about Putin. Everything Putin touches dies. Anyway, we're going to take the Wordle word of the day and use it. That's right. Funny thing about Wordle, we play every day. We've got a streak going. And Ronald Johnson, great poet from the book Ark, had whole poems made of 5-letter words. And I'm like, what great starting words these would be for Wordle. Anyway, here's where we're going to write a poem to someone. If you can figure out the someone and put their address in later, that's fine. Nobody has to share their work in this workshop, but we'll leave time for a few people to share if they want to. I think it's important to write for yourself. And if somebody gets a kick out of it, the one person you send the postcard gets a kick out of it, then it's a success. So don't feel you need to share, and don't write for others. Don't confuse marketing with a deep inner gesture. But we're going to take 9 minutes. It's 4:12. We'll be back at 4:21, and hopefully we'll have poems. I'm going to mute and turn off my camera. 4:22. How was that for people? Does anyone want to talk about what it was like to use somebody else's words or to incorporate their words in your poem? Anyone? Just pop right in.
I can jump in.
Jump in, Saga.
The book I'm working with is The Blue House. It's collected works of Thomas Tranströmer, a Swedish poet. And it's all the poems are in Swedish, and then there is a translation. So I used the words from 2 different poems in my lists, and then I made a short poem in Swedish and the translation in English. So
You're fluent in Swedish.
yes.
And you're choosing Swedish because why? Are you of Swedish heritage?
I am, but that's not the reason. Because it fits the things I write about, and it has a really wonderful sense of how to describe light, stone, nature. I just find it's, I don't know.
What was it like using their words?
It was fun. It was, and it's funny because the result isn't so different than something that Transtormer would write, meaning that it has the same, choosing a bunch of his words and rearranging them and adding it into a poem. It came back kind of like his poems. So
Do you want to share?
sure, I can share it. The Swedish is short, but you get a sound for it. Lampen danser I fruktträdgården. Koltrast rena skratta. Husen kommer med uttrycklösa ansikten. Rinden papperet över deras fönstret. Which translates to lamps dance in the orchard. Blackbirds rain laughter. Houses come with no expression on their faces. The sky papers over their windows.
Houses come? Read that line again.
Houses come with no expression on their faces. The sky papers over their windows.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. Karen, you sent the wavy clapping hands up. You also had your hand up. Karen, did you want to talk?
Yes. Well, I wanted to say I grafted something off of one of my own works to create a poem. And this is my first time doing Postcard Fest. So your suggestion that we write to somebody now in creating the poem caused me to do this. And the thing I'm grafting off us has to do with people in our lives who have made a difference. And I characterize that as, or use the metaphor of a ripple, a pebble in the pond in the work that I'm working on. So here's what I've got. Are you the pebble that ripples my pond? The sun who beckons me rise to the dawn? Or maybe it's you to whom I now write this poem on a postcard, who lessens the blight of my otherwise ho-hum and uninteresting day. Remind me to thank you. And oh, by the way, happy July. Thank you.
Anyone else want to pop in? Talking about the process is important. Reading your poem is not necessarily important, but if you'd like to share, we have a couple of minutes. Gary, yes?
I started with my favorite poet, Pablo Neruda, and two of his poems was Ode to the Bee and Ode to the Calm Bricklayer. And it came out in Spanish, so I'll read it and then print.
¿Habla español?
Sí, sí,
Sí,
un
sí.
poco, muy lento. La abeja construye su casa, no para sí misma, pero por sus nietos. La abeja construye su casa, no para sí misma, pero por sus vecinos. La abeja construye su casa, no para sí misma, pero por los flores.
En inglés, por favor.
The bee constructs its house not for himself, but for his grandchildren. The bee constructs his house not for himself, but for his neighbors. The bee constructs his house not for himself, but for the flowers.
Far out. You know, when you bring up bees, it's like Neruda didn't think that bees would be wiped out by the 21st century. He had no inkling of it. So maybe he knew something about what was happening, or maybe he just loved bees and needed to put them in his odes. One of his odes was it Odes to Little Things? Is that what the book is?
Well, it's no, odes to elements.
Elements.
So I think he was sitting somewhere, and these were things inspired by what he saw.
That's another thing to do. Go by the lake, go by a creek or something, find yourself in nature and write about what's happening. Combine a little bit of spiritual ecology into it. Great idea. Thanks, Gary. I wasn't expecting Spanish. That's fantastic. Marianne, you have your hand up and you're patiently waiting.
Yes, I'm afraid that this is in English only, but um, this I worked with a friend's book, actually a poetry friend's book called Pond. It came out in 29. Actually, it was written during 2019. I forget when it came out. And every day for a year he went to the pond. And this is kind of like what I like to do with poetry, what I foresee doing for this postcard project. In fact, I'm thinking of my poems for the month being, postcards from East Rockville, where I live. Um, and what it was like to write, I felt like I had a lot of help from my friend to really focus and use stronger images and stronger language than I had been, because I admit I had been trying to write some postcard poems quickly as possible because I know with the postcards I have, I'm going to be writing short poems because my handwriting is so big. And I I feel like I need to work up to the whole thing, and this is a good way.
Far out. I thought about the size of handwriting as I was writing, and I'm like, you have to write smaller. And I'll never forget Nashira Priester. She's gone now, but she sent me a postcard. She did the postcard fest, I think, one year. She sent me a postcard, and I think every blank place on the card was filled with words going in different directions and this and that. And yeah, there are people like that. Well, anyone else want to talk about their practice? Suzanne Austin Hill has raised her hand. Suzanne?
Hello, everyone. Um, I am using this book, Cultivating Diamonds. It is a novel written in Ukraine by the Ukrainian poet and writer and author Ihor Pavliluk. The book is available on Amazon. I'm a member of the National Federation of State Poet Societies, and they have a component now that they're sponsoring Poets for Peace. And I invite you all to check out that component on their site. The novel has been translated into English and has several poems at the end of the novel that have also been translated into English. So I took one of the phrases from a poem on page 147 from The Cycle of Spring and War. I took a phrase as the title, and then I wrote a monostitch, a one-line poem from some of the words that we selected in tonight's exercise. So the title of the poem is Like Many Times Before. Soul, mind, and humankind call upon love and faith to tourniquet the orphan's loss. Thank you.
Tourniquet, the orphan's loss. I love that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. I'm glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here, Paul.
Far out.
All right.
Do we have one more before I go into the whole day song discussion? Does anyone else want to? Oh, and if Suzanne, if you could put that link, Poets for Peace, in the chat, that'd be very cool for people who want to do that. By the way, I send out about 38 or 40 cards a year. There's people who've been doing the fest for so long, and maybe they're not in my group. So I'll send them a card. I feel bad. I wish I could write 300 a year, but I really think that it's summer is the season for postcards. Me and Art Tooley have been having this exchange for a couple of years now because he was kind of down in the dumps, and I said, well, let's do a poetry postcard exchange. And so I'll get 3 in a week from him, and I can't do it. But in the summer, in fact, I wrote to him. In my card, I had time, so I got one of the lines from the chocolate. Can you read that? Can you read that? The thing I cut out of the chocolate, the Dubai chocolate. Truly indulgent, lower sugar, always organic. And then I got the little Buddha that I was showing you. It was from some fruit gum, Buddha fruit gum that I got from my daughter. I think she was trying to send me a message. Let that shit go. And then at the bottom I have washi tape. Do people know what washi tape is? It's Japanese masking tape. And you get a little roll like this, and it has, in this case, there's cherries and a heart and other kinds of things. And you just pull out the roll and you just slap it on there. I kind of used it so that it would help the Buddha stick a little bit better, but it just kind of pulls out like that. In fact, I think that's the end of it. Come to think of it, look at that. So washi tape. We have this store in Seattle. It's a block wide Japanese grocery store called Uwajimaya, and they have washi tape there. There's also a place downtown by the Pike Place Market that has washi tape. But if you're not in Seattle and don't have a Japanese community, you could probably find it on Amazon, I'm sure. But I love washi tape. It's so cool. Who do we have here? We don't have anyone's hands up, so I'm going to go to a description of the day song. Now, I think why this is important and why I've kind of coupled postcarding and day singing is because I really think, I practice Soto Zen. We sit 3 times a week with Kosho up the hill. We drive. Should leave at 6:15. I try and journal 1,000 words before that, so leaving at 6:15 is a little tough sometimes. But we go up there and we sit and we chant. And Soto Zen was founded by a poet named Dogen, who lived from the year 1200 to I think 1253. And he said, when you find the place where you are, practice begins, actualizing the fundamental point. And I really think that the number one issue wrong with our culture is that we live in this place like invaders. We're going to live here. We're going to take all the resources. We're going to leave shit and we're going to go somewhere else, which is what we do over and over. And I think that it's easier to be healthy if you find, as Gary Snyder said, stay put, watch what happens. And when you watch what happens over a number of years, you see how things are slightly different or how things are the same or whatever. You begin to get a sense of how you react to a place. We've been in this place for 9 years, and I love to do this because we're so grateful for this view that we have. But we live in a very diverse neighborhood, Rainier Beach. There are housing projects across the street with immigrants from Somalia and Ethiopia and other places. And it's a very, very diverse part of town. Seattle's not as diverse as the town I grew up in, Chicago. But how many places are you going to see great blue heron and what have you? This is my view, just to give you an idea. Whoops, can you see that? Does anyone see what I'm talking about? Holy cow, why does anyone ever need to leave something like this? May it be so that we can run off the straight here. So I think that being put in a place, being not put in a place, but being set in a place, choosing to root in a place is a life-changing thing. And, for those of you who've gone through recovery, the geographic cure it happens not just for people who have substance abuse problems. So I'm going to go back to my website and get off the Jerome Rothenberg thing. God, his voice sounded so good, and he's been dead for a couple of years, and to hear that. So I've got this page for the day song, and I find it very easily by just typing in paulienelson.com/daysong. Maybe I should drop that in the chat to make it easy for folks. So let me do that while I'm at it. So when you go to that page, you see this is a resource page for my day song practice. This one-day writing ritual was designed for workshop participants in the ongoing Life as Rehearsal for the Poem and Poetics as Cosmology workshops. After a summer of writing poetry postcards and the spatial restriction of that practice, I encourage workshop participants to write with a temporal restriction, 24 hours, as employed by Bernadette Mayer in Midwinter Day and Pierre Joris in Canto Diurno, or Day Song. So these are the day songs that I've written so far. I've written one this year already. By the way, these last 5 are going to be published in a book through Carbonation Press sometime this summer. And I named them after the day song that I thought was going to be the last one in the book. The title of the book is The Singing Bullets of Soft Secession and Other Day Songs. Soft secession has been on the minds of blue state attorneys general and also governors. They don't say it out loud, but that's kind of what they're hinting towards. Maybe it comes to that. Maybe it would be better like that. Maybe it doesn't happen, but it's interesting to ponder. So I wrote this exercise inside the day song, the temporal epic, my first day song chapbook. There's readings. You can see Pierre Joris. I interviewed him about writing the day song. One of the things he told me in that interview, I'll never forget. I'm like, I'm interviewing him, 30 years after he wrote it. So it's like, what did you do? He says, I don't know. I know went out and got the newspaper because he referred to the newspaper. And a certain woman who was like a Red Brigade person in it, Vilma Monaco. And he's from Luxembourg, so he's got a great accent. He also said that when he moved to the United States to study at Bard with Robert Kelly, he said, how do I get a sense of American English? And Robert said, listen to the baseball games, listen to the announcers. And he became a Mets fan at that time. And if you know anything about baseball, that's kind of a curse. Another day song, 1980, that was the name of that one, writing about a particular year. This was modeled after such similar exercises by Brenda Hillman and Ed Sanders. I forget which one that was. I think it was this one. So you click on that. Yeah, here's a little bit from that. Brenda Hillman wrote about 1967 from a 2018 perspective in the poem 1967. In an 8-page, completely original poem with fond smoke on her hands, Brenda relates cultural differences between the 2 years, looking at age 67 back at the year she turned 16. Written in or around Berkeley, when the deaths of Aretha Franklin and John McCain were fresh, she weaves memory of her early womanhood/Vietnam era with 2018's cannabis dispensaries offering CBD skin cream and ageism, along the way pointing out her use of tropes such as cliché, antenoclasis, and anadysplosis, as well as her personal touches like electrons in the minutes. Here's a bit of that. The thought of electrons giving off their light and their glory while every bit of otherness is betrayed. I'm walking up Telegraph during speeches for Aretha Franklin and John McCain, delivered in Eastern rooms where caskets are displayed, heading to Amoeba for extra Aretha music, stopping to ask the young man, "What is this?" And he says, "It's a dispensary." And I say, "Oh, for smoking pot." And he says, "Not just for smoking. You can eat it, rub it on." Big pot smell puffing out, big contemptuous look from him. And fortunately, I do not start a sentence. In my generation, the wrinkles in my face open their personal gates to the lyrical. Fog allowing color. Electrons pour into the brain till light brings minutes. Someday there will be a happy medium, cliché, of a happy medium looking into a crystal ball, antenna classes. Many shops are closing now. Is Amoeba Records doomed? And if so, when? Apple charges $9.95 for music you can't touch. Stop pausing. Sunlight. There is nothing in 1967. A bit of research helps any poem, and here, using 2 well-known but disparate characters to anchor the poem grounds it, as do phrases that help us understand what motivated Brenda back in the day when she writes, "Poetry was secret dope." And then Ed Sanders had a whole book, 1968. In fact, Ed Sanders has done whole books on America in verse, and they're so hard to put down. It's from a left-wing perspective and fascinating. So finding yourself, arranging for yourself to be alone, ideally, and writing on that particular day. I've gotten into the practice of doing some kind of ritual the night before, setting an intention, like especially with Imbolc, which is, the pagan beginning of spring and a holiday honoring St. Bridget, the goddess, the Irish goddess of poetry. Fire is a big part of Imbolc. So I'll go to the park right here on the water and start a little fire. If we've done it right, we had a wreath for Christmas, and by February 1st, it's nice and dry and goes up quick. So that's one thing. And then also, I have a practice of journaling every day, which I recommend to everybody. But for those occasions, I will journal the night before and not have the morning to have my journal thing going on. So that way you wake up and, the ideal situation is that you have some dream recall and the dream material goes into the poem. What does that do? It's going to put weirdness into the poem, first of all, which I think is great. I don't think there's enough weirdness in our poems. And that's a bit of advice from Brenda Hillman. Always revise towards the strange, I think it is. I might be paraphrasing. So the poem has weirdness in it, has great imagery, and also has personal mythology. This is saying so much about you, which you may not even be aware of. And I think that's part of the dream, the purpose of dreams, the mission of dream is to open your life to something that you're not conscious of in some way. I had a dream this morning. I didn't write the recall, but I was trying to hit the softball into the next zip code, and I kept missing. So maybe that's a metaphor for trying too hard. I don't know. Or a metaphor for being a White Sox fan. Although they took 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers, so I feel pretty good about that. So I could read you some of my day songs if you like. I can show you some other exercises, but I'd like to entertain questions because we still have 15 minutes left and I want to honor that. So somebody had a question about what the day song is. The gentleman from Tacoma. Did you get a sense of what I'm
So
asking
I
of you?
think, well, I gather it's a day song is a song about the day, or the year, or time specific period, and just some reflections about whatever happened that day, or what is something that it meant for you. Is that kind of the idea?
Yes, I think so. And I think that using little tricks like grafting, find yourself a bunch of quotes, number one. Number two, you just have, if you've done it right, you've just done 31 original poems on postcards. Could you look back at those and get a sense if there's more to be said about that particular subject? With 31 poems just written, chances are yes. And because Pierre Joris forgot what he did, I put exactly what I did. I stopped at 8:34. I made buckwheat pancakes with blueberries and chia seeds in them and had a cup of I had a maple flavored latte and I took a walk or whatever. I got some stuff for the rabbit. I picked some blackberry leaves or something. So the actual specifics, because 5 years later you look back and you'll say, no wonder I was so fat. I was eating buckwheat pancakes all the time or whatever comes to your mind. But you'll be reminded of that. And let's face it, we're different selves. 6 months. What does it take for all the cells in your body to totally regenerate? 6 months or something like that? So imagine 5 years later, you're looking at this, and hopefully you're a different person. And hopefully you're a little more wise and a little more compassionate and a little more kind to yourself than I was just displaying about my own self. So, yes, writing about the day, but I think in writing about the luminous details of your life, we get some sense of what your day is. There's one other interesting thing that um, I did this. I thought I came up with it, but Sam Hamill says, "Oh, you do that too, huh?" And it's a thing called a cover poem. I'm going to bring this up. I know that people who've taken my workshop know about this, but I'm going to go back to my page, and then I'm pretty sure this is a workshop prompt that I've put on there. Cover poem. Here it is. Rewrite, new arrangement. Oftentimes I'll see a poem, or in the case below, one is sent to me, and feel that it needs updating or could stand to be altered to fit the conditions of my particular place and time while yet still addressing the original core intent or not. It's like translation, but more like a cover in music that uses a different arrangement. I have done this a few times and it can be an organic experience. That is, you get a hit from each image and through free association, come up with the image that best fits your experience, something more applicable to your sense of time and place. For instance, if Pablo Neruda is talking about Valparaiso, maybe you're talking about Point Defiance, for instance, right? What's appropriate to you? What substrate? So I believe a core aspect of the organic poetry philosophy is one that connects deeply to place, because if you're not rooted in the place in which you live, knowing the rivers, the plant species, rhythms of seasons, etc., what substrate is supporting your practice, you rootless cosmopolitan? For more on the poetics of place, the essay by Andrew Schelling, Post-Coyote Poetry, is quite useful. Peter Berg's notion of bioregionalism is also of great use. So begin with a poem. If you use one that's by a famous poet, you have the benefit of allusion, literary allusion. For those who are familiar with the poem, it will add an extra element to the subject. For this example, I've chosen a Neruda poem. Here's the final version. Now we will count to four times and feel our breath hold deep. This, once we watch the winter sun stop above our one last planet, we can speak a silent language in stillness even the cats can hear. Un momento eterno, no snow blowers, no Hawaiian weed whackers, the SUVs crunch in foot-deep snow stopped We watch breath. The postman takes a moment to forget about terriers. The barista stops the sound of steaming milk. The guitarist looks at years of blistered fingers, tries to remember lost chords. Those who would invent new forms of torture, whose romance is the construct of endless Abu Ghraibs, would feel something deeper inside than they have felt since age 8. Remember walks with their brother, then realize what the good gray poet meant by loafing. This is not the death watch, not the notion of life's last call. All that matters is breath in and out, the electric surge underneath being of use. Who called the quorum of the constantly distracted? I was not in the hall, but inside in silence. We begin to recognize the systems, and every cell in them having their own intelligence, their own silent language. Only a few have been faithful elements of, and we can now begin to try and understand their reward as we watch the snowflakes fall or the dance of rainforest ferns as each random raindrop hits. And then the original is below here. Pablo Neruda. Is that big enough? Should I make it a little bigger? Here you go. Here's Pablo's version, or the original version. Now we will count to 12, and we will all keep still. This one time upon the earth, let's not speak any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. It would be a delicious moment, without hurry, without locomotives. All of us would be together in a sudden uneasiness. The fisherman in the cold sea would do no harm to the whales, and the peasant gathering salt would look at his torn hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars of gas, wars of fire, victories without survivors, would put on clean clothing and would walk alongside their brothers in the shade without doing a thing. What I want shouldn't be confused with final inactivity. Life alone is what matters. I want nothing to do with death. If we weren't unanimous about keeping our lives so much in motion, if we could do nothing for once, perhaps a great silence would interrupt this sadness, this never understanding ourselves and threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth is teaching us when everything seems to be dead, and then everything is alive. Now I will count to 12, and you keep quiet, and I'll go. So you heard the cover first, and then you heard the original by Pablo Neruda. I'm going to go back to DaySong. So write for as long as you can in a day. Use different writing exercises. Look back at your 31 postcards. Anything that you were crimped in writing about, there's no such crimpage for the DaySong. And what it does is it gives you a huge range as a poet, right? You can write the monostitch like Suzanne Austen Hill did, one line, and have that beautiful tourniquet used as a verb. What a great twist that was. You can write postcard poems and have, hopefully, your writing is medium size, so you can get a decent amount, maybe 12 lines on the card. And then maybe there's some stuff in those postcards that you're like, oh yeah, it'll take you back to the moment you were composing. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember thinking about this. Mixing in current events, I think, helps us understand the Dharma position. Putting in certain birds, I just see the heron, the great blue heron, fly up on top of the green boat, and now he's going elsewhere, Probably not going to be December if it's the great blue heron. He doesn't come around here then, or she doesn't. The coots are not to be found, so it's not a coot era poem. That's like October 20th through late April, maybe May. So the kinds of luminous details that go in the poem will give us some sense, like in haiku, of what the seasonal references, that kind of thing, but the luminous details. Yeah, this is what Kellyanne said. Some postcarders will take a word or theme from a poem they received and use it for the next one they write and send, sort of paying it forward. And that's another thing. That's the beautiful thing, because poet number 8 on your list, if you're number 7, poet number 8 sends you a poem, and you're writing by then to poet number 21, and neither of them are going to know exactly what you did. You took a line from so and so, sent it to somebody else, but on some level they're going to know, because we're energetic beings, and things don't work in the limited Newtonian universe that we have been brainwashed to accept. So the day song is liberating. You have to write every day. It's really helpful. If you start journaling every day, if you do the Postcard Fest and do it right, get at least 31 poems out, then you're better set up for success on the day of the day song. And you know what? You'll also get some sense when it should be over. Don't feel like you got to wake up at 6 a.m. and you've got to write, obviously with breaks. You have to go to the bathroom. You got to get your steps in. You got to eat. You got to do these things. I mark the time so I know. And then the weirdest thing I didn't realize, but by the end of the day, I can see exactly how many minutes of the day I've been engaged in writing. And it goes by fast, and you'd be stunned by how much you can get done in a day. Don't feel like it's a competition if you get 8 beautiful pages. Don't feel like you can't edit it after if you see some moments where you felt it was inauthentic or you need to edit it a bit. Don't feel that it's not like the postcard thing. Make sure it's perfect. Read it when it's fresh, I think. The next day especially is good, and you get some sense out of it. You get some distance. And then don't fuck with it too much. Move on to the next thing because the Dharma position has changed. That's my suggestion. I'm told the poet William Stafford avoided news and wrote about his own news, what he was feeling, what he was doing, what was in his life every day, which is consistent with what Ezra Pound said. Poetry is news that stays news, right? It's also consistent. This whole practice is consistent with what William Stafford believed. If you're not writing a poem a day, your standards are too high, is what he said. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And the other thing is what Ginsberg said. You can write anything you want as long as you don't show anybody. In the Postcard Fest, well, you are showing someone. You're showing one person, but you don't have to feel bad about that. I think getting a poem, even a mediocre poem from someone or what you might consider mediocre, is at least a beautiful peaceful and loving gesture from someone. And it's better than the Costco catalog or the dentist card or any of the other stuff we get. We take a look at and we throw it into the recycle bin. At least we do that in Seattle. 4:58. Any questions, comments, criticisms, concerns? This video will be made available as soon as I can edit it, and I won't be editing it much. I'm slap a beginning and an end on it, get it online, send it to you all, everybody who registered for this, and you'll have access to it, and then probably make a post about it. We need content for the Postcard Fest because we're going to keep reminding people, hey, time's running out to sign up for this. By the way, if you have friends who'd be interested in the Postcard Fest, the best advertising is word of mouth. And, this is the time of year. Sign up and you get a list on the 4th of July. There's not much waiting. Otherwise, it's long waiting. And, that's part of digging into the seasonality of this whole thing. Any questions? Want to raise your cyber hand or just pop in? Well, I'm seeing, oh, Maggie, say hi. I'm glad you're all here. I'm glad we had such good registrations for this event. I'm grateful to be able to do this work and having other people do this Postcard Fest. I never thought I was going to last 20 years, but now I can't see the summer without it, to be honest with you. So I've got my little plastic box with a handle where I have my stamps and scissors and glue and cereal boxes and postcards and all kinds of things. And it's there year round now. So it's part of my life. Thank you for being here.